Composting grasses, according to Van Rijn method. In our growing Netherlands, quite a few organizations are active in maintaining our landscape. This maintenance releases large quantities of green plant parts. Pruned wood is shredded, hay is sometimes extracted from grass crops, and ditch waste still often finds its way to landfill. Useful materials are not always put to good use. At such a moment it makes sense to look for techniques that can lead to the useful use of clean materials. And composting is one of them. During a literature search in 1984, Henk van Rijn found specialist literature from the 1920s and 1930s, which dealt with the processing of manure. The German agronomist Kranz had the most interesting ideas, also the most extraordinary. His scientific research had a specific goal. This focused on the preservation of the nutritional components in the manure and the organic matter present. All this prompted Henk van Rijn to develop a composting method, in which composting bacteria play the most important role. He calls those bacteria, my flock. Because he soon noticed that especially grasses are difficult to process into compost. He accepted the challenge with both hands, because then it will be really fun. In the course of the 1980s, Van Rijn developed a way of working, which had to meet a few not unimportant requirements. Cheap and non-polluting for soil and air. And above all, the total setup had to lead to a good end product, because only a good end product can generate good money. This resulted in a project based on an infrastructure of concrete and foil, with wet and dry processing, and with relatively little mechanization. Most of the work is done by bacteria, unobtrusively and silently. The shovel is responsible for the transport and the most noise. The production area was equipped with an inoculation container made of liquid-tight concrete. A container in which organic materials are inoculated with inoculation fluid. Everything depends on unfavorable conditions, and the best start is a wet start. Bacteria thrive best on land in a moist environment. The production area was equipped with an inoculation container made of liquid-tight concrete. A container in which organic materials are evolved with seed fluid. These materials may have already been somewhat affected by wind and weather, or they may have been obtained green immediately. It doesn't make much of a difference. But the materials must be sourced cleanly as much as possible. They are then free of sand and stones, because clean raw materials produce a cleaner compost. And the organic matter present is not hindered by sand and stones. The grafting of the raw materials is done with a specially developed water machine. This is still in its infancy here. It was later fitted with an automatic baffle and cord guide and a stronger water hose. Composting bacteria are, as it were, reigned over the spread raw materials. The adhering moisture must be maximum, so wet through and through. The wet file parts from the previous compost heaps, or the percolation moisture, and also the rainwater, are collected in a large basin. Composting bacteria specially cultivated for this purpose are added to this water. Percolating moisture serves as a willing carrier of the composting bacteria. The percolation moisture and the rainwater become seed moisture, and the grafting moisture is then again for the explosive development of the forcing in the compost heap. Organic material with adhering water and oxygen are the ingredients for the high temperatures. Now it's time to stack for the first forcing. The grafted bacteria control the entire process, and we will know what they have achieved after about a week. If you want to break something, you have to hit it. No other argument would make more sense than this theory. Until the moment we get involved in smashing hay like in moist grasses. Moist hay cannot be beaten. It grabs you and wraps itself around you. It smothers every attempt at violence in a hopeless tangle of fibers and twisted steel. More horsepower just misses the mark. What we now see as something so self-evident was developed after a year of thinking and trying tirelessly. After a year of searching for the cheapest, the most elegant and the fastest mechanical principle. From sawing to cutting. From grinding to picking and crushing to crushing. The tough and compliant nature of moist hay inspires a tough and compliant performance. Since the solution was not to be found in brute force and horsepower, a more subtle method had to be considered. In a few small steps, with a principle that you should not want to do mechanically what bacteria can do for you. The raw materials are first digested in advance, and then mechanically picked. Speed and power are precisely matched. Based on the result achieved, we determine the continuation of the work. What bacteria can do, you should not solve mechanically. The color and woodiness of the raw materials can be used to judge whether they are well or less well affected by bacteria. It can usually not be prevented that the material is spread too thickly in the graft tray, or that the graft moisture is spread along the miniature hay bump without touching the heart of the grass. Due to all kinds of circumstances, it can happen that fibers of grass are not digested by seed moisture bacteria in one go. The raw materials usually have to be wetted again. The further the composting process progresses, the more moisture can be absorbed. Giving fluids twice is generally sufficient. Depending on the outside temperature and the carefulness of the preparations for composting, promotes the development of the bacteria stairs in the compost heap, with which the composting also progresses. Now the pre-treated grass is entering its final composting phase. This phase will only last 8 weeks during the summer period. The composting heap remains untouched all the time so as not to disturb the process. After complete composting, the end product can be processed for all kinds of applications. It is recommended to store the product dry from now on, with the aim that weather, wind and weed seed don't stand a chance. Depending on the source material, the compost has a rough or fine structure. Compost from all kinds of grass is finer and sticky, and compost from all kinds of wood is coarser and separating. Good results are achieved here with compost from grass and reeds. When choosing the starting material, the applications of the end product are already taken into account. The possibilities of authorities that maintain the landscape are limited to the materials that are released in the process. Everyone will make their own economic considerations for composting on a small and large scale. Compost of grass and reeds, or grasses. Henk van Rijn opted for quality for an optimal product. Also for sales in the market where quality is a requirement. Professional horticulture and also the consumer market for ecological products. At the end of the production cycle, we are left with very little production waste. This waste consists of the plastic bags and containers and the glass that we ourselves seem to scatter all around us. In addition, we find a few sticks and stones that are rolled into sticky compost during sieving with the drum sieve. They are thus turned into solid balls, so that they end up in the waste container. If we compost and sieve that waste again afterwards, we can still use it, for example as backfill. No more than 1% of the entire annual production ultimately ends up in landfill as waste. When a grower holds this in his hands, something happens inside. Many garden enthusiasts or consumers also respond in this way. What it is hard to put into words. It suddenly all fits together again. The structure, not too sticky, not too loose. And the chemical analysis should reveal at a later stage whether there is sufficient nutritional value and the correct acidity. Even then, the possible contamination with heavy metals will play a role. But the first impression is created. You hold a piece of healthy soil in your hands, and that gives you the understanding of having something that can keep your growing program healthy. After all, that's what horticulture is all about. They maintain our landscape. For example, we choose ecological verge management, or for managing the so-called bird country. By mowing the land, we impoverish the nutritional value of the soil. Weeds get another chance and give new opportunities to animal welfare. Landscape management releases crops for a new and useful use. What first seemed to be a problem becomes a new possibility. We follow Mother Nature's cycle. Lend her a hand and wait patiently for her to do her job. Compost as a soil improver in a neutral quality with a neutral acidity. Unmixed, it is suitable for cultivation for lettuce, endive and other leafy vegetables, such as tomatoes and many other vegetables. For cut flowers and potted plants, we put together potting soil mixtures with peat or another product, and with fertilizers and lime, depending on the needs of the plant. Compost for container cultivation and press pots, as a biologically active soil improver and to improve potting soil. In short, the new black gold.